What is the future of beauty? Jody's just shown us that our love of form, pattern, structure is ingrained. We love beauty, as Toby showed earlier as well. But what about the future of beauty? Because not only do we love beauty, but we love creating beautiful things, new beautiful things. And so the question I'd like to address today is where the inspiration, or at least some of the inspiration, for the next generation of artists, photographers, designers, scientists, and people in general, where that inspiration will come from. And to look at one possibility, we need to take a step back in time. This is the Parthenon, classical architecture, Parthenon II actually. And the Parthenon has pattern, it has symmetry, and, importantly, it has function. Really heavy columns to hold up a really heavier roof for centuries. But it's a little bit dark inside. So we fast forward a millennia or so to the cathedral at Reims. Now we have columns still, a vaulted ceiling, a beautiful space with symmetry, and critically now, glass, so that it's not quite as dark, or it's not dark at all, really. It's illuminated. Forward a couple of centuries, and we have gone from the heavens, temples and cathedrals, to the more commercial. This is a Chrysler building, and there's still some glass in the windows. We've mastered the engineering, and we're bragging a little bit that we can add some decorative elements. So it's Art Deco. Now, fast forward to the present, even more down to earth, from the heavens to the commercial, to Earthship architecture. And here, there's even more glass used in different ways, even a little bit of recycling there. No diamonds, I don't think. Sorry, Toby. But here, the concentration is on sustainability. And I would like to do now, for the rest of this talk, is come down to earth even more and talk about possible inspirations for the future in both glass and in sustainability. And I'm going to do that by talking about microbes. Microbes dominate the biosphere and always have. By number, it's fantastical. By mass, it's 100 times everything that you can see around us. So the whole biosphere, all the visible stuff, microbes, 100 times more. And they'll be here long after humans are gone, fixing things up probably. There are believed to be approximately 10 to the 23, that's one with 23 zeros after it, different species now. But I'm just going to talk about one small group. And these are the Diatoms. And this is a 350-year-old drawing. This is actually the anniversary of the microbe this year, 350th anniversary. And they are single-celled microalgae. Quite small. This is an individual. Sometimes they stick together in funny patterns. And you can see a little bit of pattern and a little bit of symmetry there. But we had to wait until the late 19th century to really get an appreciation for the complexity of the patterns. And this is by the German naturalist Ernst Haeckel. And each one of these is the shell of one diatom species. And each one has all of this associated microstructure, we might call it, or nanostructure. So these are the cells. And they absolutely fascinated people in the 19th century. So much so that none less than Charles Darwin said that there were few objects that were more beautiful and admired And they were marveled at by microscopists, and Darwin even wondered if maybe that's why they had been created. Now, my comment on that is that diatoms produce more than 20% of the oxygen on the planet. So we would be short of breath without them. So they're more than mere curios. And if we look at a live cell, here, the colored parts are the cell contents, the guts. So we're looking at the guts. The shell, you can just barely see striations, and maybe in the back you can't see them, but there are little sort of striations going back and forth. That's the shell. And the reason it's difficult to see is because diatoms make their shells out of glass. And so to see them better, we use an electron microscope. This is a very simple diatom from Antarctica, actually. And what we see is this glass outer shell with holes. It needs the holes because, excuse me, because the nutrients need to go in and the waste material needs to leave. They are living things. And it's a very simple radial symmetry. There are other symmetries as well. This is a bilateral symmetry. Ribs going out from a central line. They're still the holes because they need to eat and expel waste. If we look at yet another species, and here it's very thinly covered with glass. Very thin, there's a little bit of glass structures underneath. We're going to cut that, do a cross-section. And what we see is this. Now this is quite small, so that's 1/millionth of a meter, or about 1/100th the width of a human hair, and that's why it's all blurry. The cell would be here, but in the preparation process it's gone. The ocean would be out here, and this little chamber supported by these columns is what makes diatoms so successful and what gives us 20% of our oxygen. Because here they store nutrients just temporarily before they go into the cell. So there's some function with all of this structure. If we go back and look at the same diatom here and make a cross-section in these tiny, tiny holes, we see something more dramatic. And here are the small holes, and they're over stacked chambers. And these stacked chambers have support columns reminiscent of Reims and the Parthenon. And again, they're incredibly small. This is 1/millionth of a meter, so much smaller than that. And there are two features that inspire at least scientists. And that is that they've taken the columns, excuse me, and the glass, and they've combined them into one. So if you're able to expand this and look at it, it would just be transparent. We're using an electron microscope, so it's not transparent. But it would be transparent if one were able to view it directly. So that's one feature. The second feature is that this was built with a carbon framework. To biologists, they're called cytoskeletons. And it was built at ambient temperature. In fact, the one from Antarctica I showed you was built at 1 degree C. And what that means is very efficient, very small amount of energy input to create something that is incredibly strong and with incredible control. So not only are diatoms inspiring for their hundreds of thousands of morphologies, there are more than 100,000 species known, but also for the processes that they both integrate and use to manufacture these structures. And so for the future, this might be one source of inspiration. And not just for the future. This, some of you will recognize as the new South Australian Health and Medical Research Institute, and indeed, many of the features, the symmetry, the repeat patterns, even some of the protective features, are actually found in diatoms, reminiscent of diatoms. So for the future, for some inspiration, look to microbes. Thank you.